My cousin slept with my wife and made me raise his child for 15 years. I was 18 when I met my ex Mary Soul. During that time, I was a gangbanger with the Latin Kings. Mary Soul was a church girl. My grandmother dragged me to Sunday Mass, and when I saw her, it was love at first sight. I asked my cousin, who was a friend of hers, if he could introduce us, but he refused. He didn't want me to mess with her. He didn't want me to ruin her. I wanted to be better for her. When I found out that she was going to church almost every day, I hung out by the steps, talking to her. I always walked her to and from church. She made me feel like I wasn't worthless. One thing led to another and we were dating and I felt great. For a year and a half I pushed myself away from the gang life, got my GED, became a regular churchgoer and was thinking about the future when I got unintentionally pulled back in. I was at a store and ran into someone that I used to have problems with. They were running their mouths and I tried to ignore it, I swear I did. I just let them talk and I walked away, but then I got jabbed with a pencil in the shoulder blade and I lost my mind. I wailed on him. I got arrested and suddenly it was like the stuff I did to make my life better vanished. Mary Soul was mad at me, my grandmother kept bringing up my past mistakes and my cousin was telling me that he knew that I wasn't going to change. My public defender saw me trying to better myself and by the grace of God, got me off after a month in lockup. Despite being angry with me, Mary Soul did visit me almost daily. After I got out, I found out I was going to be a father and I didn't want my kid to have a dad that was dead or in jail. We eloped, I went to a trade school to become a mechanic and I busted my butt for my future family. When my baby Luna was born, it was almost the worst day of my life. Mary Soul wouldn't stop bleeding. She went into shock. She was in the hospital for months and Luna became my world. I wanted her life to be the best, I wanted to give her the world. When Mary Soul was released, I promised her that our daughter will have a life far better than ours and for years I kept that promise. I saved enough money to move us to the suburbs, became homeowners, I was a Girl Scout leader. I made sure Luna went to private school, made sure she knew how to defend herself and always made sure I was the perfect husband. I didn't know my parents. Didn't have a positive male role model in my life, so I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like. As the years went by I owned my own garage, my cousin became a pastor, my grandmother was still a pain in my butt, my relationship with my wife was stronger than ever, I made sure I kept my prison body, but my daughter Luna hated me. Since she turned 13 she just started hating me. She didn't want me to hug her. Rolled her eyes every time I told her I loved her. Ignored me when I asked her about her day in school. It hurt me and Mary Soul saw it. She told me that she's a teenager and that I should just let it ride. She will come back to me. For 2 years it was like that. So for her quinceañera, I wanted to go all out. Got everything she wanted and she was still disrespectful and briefly the old me almost came out just to put her in her place, but instead, I went to my cousin, vented my frustration and doubts about being a good father and he told me to just let her be and he said a prayer for me. I wanted a slideshow for the father-daughter dance. I got a chunk of the pictures of us together, but I realized I didn't have any recent pictures of us. She didn't want to take any. The last time I had pictures of her and I smiling with me was on her 13th birthday and those were on my daughter's broken tablet. I took that tablet, went to a repair shop and I didn't care about the cost. I needed that tablet fixed. After a day and $300. The tech fixed it and I was happy. I knew her passcode, but I never bothered invading her privacy. I just wanted those pictures and when I opened that tablet and looked in the gallery, there they were. My little girl, smiling and happy to be with me. I felt great. Then the instant messages appeared. It was my daughter talking to my wife. It was a long banter that she didn't want me to dance with her and it did hurt, but like my wife said, she's being a teenager. Then she said something that destroyed me. She texted why she had to do the father-daughter dance with me since I'm not her father. I felt my heart stop. My wife responded that I raised her, I loved her, and that makes me her father. But Luna responded by saying that my cousin is her father and she can't wait for her to turn 18 so she could tell me the truth and she could live with her real dad. That she hated me, that she thanked God that I'm not her father. Mary Soul began cursing her out. Saying that it was a mistake for my cousin to tell her the truth 2 years ago and the more they talked, the angrier I got. My wife lied to me for 15 years. My cousin whom I confide my issues about Luna and my fears about being a bad father not only effed my wife, but had me raise his child. I wanted to hurt them. I went to a dark place so I wouldn't do anything stupid. I told Mary Soul that I needed to focus on work so I could pay the quints and instead I drove to Manhattan and saw my old public defender who wasn't a low-level attorney anymore. He had a nice expensive firm near Midtown East. I was surprised that he remembered me, but apparently, I was his first case as a public defender. We sat down and I told him everything. Gave him the tablet and when he turned it on, the messages just kept coming. Only this time, Luna was talking to my cousin, her real father, and he was telling her to give me a chance. How I was always there for her, but Luna told him that so was he. How it makes sense that they have so much in common and even called him Poppy multiple times in their conversation and he responded and told her that she was his little girl. We went through our options and he asked me what I want to do. And I told him that I wanted to go full scorched earth. I wanted to poison the well and he asked me several times if that is what I wanted and I nodded. I also told him that everything had to be filed before the quints in 2 weeks. So we sat down and spent the next 12 hours on what needed to be done. I secretly placed my business for sale. Called the private school and told them that I will not be paying for next year. Closed the college accounts, and the savings that I had for Luna and prepared to place my house for sale online. No one was the wiser. I followed his instructions perfectly. There was only one thing I deviated from. The day of the quints. That day went off without a hitch. The whole family was there. Luna was smiling, having fun. Mary Soul kept asking me if I was okay and I lied to her. It was hard lying to her. From the moment I met her, I never lied to her and during those 2 weeks, every time, I kissed her, held her, made love to her. It was hard not to scream at her. It was hard not to hate her. When it was time for the father-daughter dance, I called her to the center of the stage. She looked annoyed, but walked over. I had the music playing and she smiled and it tore me apart, seeing her smiling at me. For years I wanted to see that smile again and now I didn't want it. As we danced, I had the slideshow playing. Pictures of the two of us and towards the end of the song, screenshots of her text messages with her mother and real father. Needless to say this didn't bode too well. Mary Soul looked like she saw a ghost, Luna just kept staring at the large screen and my cousin just stared at me with fear. Mary Soul ran to me and told me that she could explain and I told her that I filed for a divorce. That she could explain it in court. She grabbed my arm, begging me and I pulled back. I told Luna that I busted my butt to give the world, and now she doesn't deserve it. I began to walk out, but not before telling my cousin that every time I see him, I'm going to knock him out. Then I knocked him out. The aftermath was harsh. Mary Soul and Luna were at my grandmother's apartment. Her family was shocked and disgusted with her, they wanted nothing to do with her. Her father actually apologized to me. My grandmother had the audacity to tell me about the story Abraham and how when came back from battle 3 years later, his wife had a 1-year-old child and he raised him as his own and how I should be like Abraham, so I told her to get the F out of my house. Mary Soul came a few days later, crying as soon as she saw me, telling me that it was an accident. That when I was arrested she was so angry at me and my cousin was there to console her and one thing led to another and they had intimacy. It happened only one time and she was faithful to me ever since. She was willing to take a lie detector test to prove it. So I asked her how long she knew Luna wasn't mine and she started crying more. That look she gave me just told me that she knew from day one and asked her to leave. She wanted to go to counseling, telling me that I'm overreacting and we could make it work. It was in the past and I needed to get over it. That I am Luna's father, despite what happened and I allowed my temper to get the best of me. I must have repeated get over it? Over a dozen times at full volume while grabbing her stuff and tossing it out the door. I told her that I didn't want to see her effing face ever again, and I told her that this life that I built, no longer belongs to her before shoving her out the door. I have a new stepsister. It seems like she is trying to anger me on purpose. My mother passed away 8 years ago and it's been just my father and I since then. After my mother passed away, my father was a shell of his former self and it took him years to get back on his feet. Around 3 years ago my dad met Lisa. They met randomly during one of my father's work trips and hit it off. They dated for 2 years. During their dating period, I found out Lisa has a daughter from a previous marriage, Marika. I met her once during a dinner and we didn't speak at the time. She didn't look particularly interested in knowing each other and I'm not exactly a talkative person. Last year my father proposed to Lisa, she said yes and 6 months ago they got married. Lisa and Marika moved into our house. Marika has been an unbearable pain in my butt since the day we started living together. The day they moved in, I went into her room and told her that I understood it was a big change and that if she wanted to talk about anything or wanted to know anything about the town or needed anything at all, she simply needed to ask and I would help her as much as possible. In response, I was rudely kicked out of her room and told to F off. I own my own motorbike. It's a second-hand one. I worked for it and used basically everything I had to buy it. Since my father and Lisa work in different places in opposite directions, they both take their car in the morning to go to work, so the only vehicle left is my motorbike. I told Marika that if she needed a ride somewhere, I would gladly give her a lift there. She said no and thought the thing ended there, only to find out she took my motorbike without permission while I was sleeping and went who knows where. She doesn't even have a license. Our house doesn't have many rules. They can be summed up in, clean after yourself, if you have something that need to be washed, put it in the laundry basket instead of throwing it on the floor, girlfriends and boyfriends are allowed in the house but it would be appreciated and heads up before bringing them home, in order to avoid accidents. They are easy rules, right? Well, apparently not since she broke all of them constantly. Our parents are often away for a couple of days. My father often travel for work and Lisa can work remotely and they enjoy spending some time alone together, so she often goes with him when he travels. During those periods, me and Marika are alone. I can cook for myself and it doesn't cost me anything to cook one more meal, so I ask her if she wants something and she either refuses or accepts, but acts as if she is basically doing me a favor by eating my food. I could go on about other episodes where she basically did everything she could to tick me and Dad off. Lisa and Dad tried to talk to her multiple times but she either acted as if nothing happened or didn't give a damn about what they were saying. In the past few weeks it looked like she had calmed down. She still had her sharp tongue and her irritating way of speaking but she looked calmer. She went out with friends, she stopped trying to anger me on purpose, it looked like she and Dad were getting along better and we even found ourselves joking with each other during lunch and dinner. But then yesterday I found her snooping around in my room, looking at my books and touching my stuff. I don't know what she was looking for and she basically ran away the moment she saw me. I intend to question her about it when she comes back home today. My best friend has always acted very strange around my mom. I just found out why. Objectively, my mother is very attractive. All of my friends make jokes about effing my mom, but none of them ever genuinely acted weird around her. Except my best friend Dave. Dave would find any excuse to talk to my mother. He's a feet kind of guy and it didn't help that my mom never really wore socks around the house. I have caught Dave glazing his eyes at my mother's piggies more times than I care to count. Dave and I are 19 so I know hormones are getting to him. In the past when he's walked around my mom, he's purposely brushed up on her behind, given her extra long hugs, and complimented how she smells. They go to the same gym, where I bet you can find Dave feasting his eyes upon my mother at the squat rack. It does make me uncomfortable though Dave is my best friend and has helped me out more than anyone in my life. He helped me get through the death of my dad and go through my last abusive relationship. I never figured he would actually attempt something with my mother. But oh how wrong I was. A few months ago, my mother and I were alone in the house for a night together, and were planning on having drinks. My mother has always been a fan of Dave, he's such a good friend, invite him over she said. Not considering it too much, and figuring it might be fun, I did. I texted him saying my mom wanted him to pull up and this dude showed up right after I texted. He was all sweaty from sprinting here across town. We invited him in and we were all sharing drinks. We played Just Dance, Twister, and poker. It was 1 a.m. and I went to bed, leaving them alone. Looking back, this was the biggest mistake of my life. A few hours later, I woke up in the middle of the night really thirsty, so I went downstairs, and as I was going into the kitchen what I saw made me have to rub my eyes to make sure I wasn't still dreaming. Dave, receiving neck from my mom, while being very vocal about the sensations he was feeling. I gasped, and they both noticed me. My mother was a little embarrassed about it, but literally went back to giving Dave neck. I yelled at them and they stopped. I asked them what the F they were doing, and Dave yelled back. They were both completely messed up by this point, and Dave was half laughing half explaining. What I made out from his slurring was the fact it started with a game. Dave knew I kept an intimacy toy called the Freaky Dice in my room and use it for my hookups. When I was sleeping, he said he snuck into my room, and stole the dice. He went back into the living room, and he and my mom started playing it. Their dice orchestrated navel kissing turned into more, and voila, was the exact thing Dave stated. I tried to kick Dave out, but my mom objected. We had a huge argument and it's been a few months since then. In these few months, my mother and Dave started dating, and I have left home and gone no contact with both. Edit, the dice is from Qturges just F off asking about it UHRNYFs.